And they've gotten maybe their bow ball out in front of the pack right away.
Ladies and gentlemen, now getting underway at the starting line is our first race of the NCAA Women's Rowing Championships. This is the Division I.
So right now it's UCLA, although Virginia coming back and drawing level
in lane
with
1
them.
is UCLA.
Third,
lane 2, Central Florida.
And then Harvard.
Lane 3, Virginia. Lane 4, Brown. And lane 5,
and,
Harvard.
As we're 350, 400
Ladies and gentlemen,
meters
calling
into
the race
Virginia
from the water
now
this afternoon, this morning, is Bill Zach.
About a 4-seat lead over UCLA, which is still holding on to second place, but by just a seat over Brown. So those are your lead 3, and those are the 3 crews that are looking to advance directly into the semifinal. About 1 minute and 34 seconds to the 500-meter mark. And it continues to be Virginia, and they're expanding their lead. They've gone out a half a boat length over both UCLA and Brown. And Brown is challenging UCLA for second place. Locked about 3/4 of a length behind Brown and UCLA are Harvard and Central Florida in that order, as Harvard has just moved a couple seats ahead of Central Florida. However, your leader now continues to be University of Virginia. As I pointed out, they've had good and recent success here on this race course. Brown is in second, UCLA is in third, but it's Harvard coming up in lane 5, about 3 to 4 seats behind UCLA, that's going to look to take away that third qualifying spot from the Bruins from California. Virginia continues now. They have about 6 seats over Brown. Brown has 6 or 7 seats over UCLA. UCLA has a seat barely over Harvard, and then it's half a length back to Central Florida. Well, Virginia and Brown right now want to make it pretty obvious that they're going to be the crews advancing directly to the semifinal and leave it up to UCLA and Harvard to battle it out for the final qualifying position. Brown is hanging with Virginia, just about half a length behind, and Brown almost a full length over Harvard and UCLA as we go through the 1,000-meter mark in 3 minutes and 10 seconds. And by we, I mean Virginia, continuing 5 seats ahead of Brown, and Harvard, I believe, has just maybe put their bow ball in front of UCLA. So it's Harvard now in third, UCLA in fourth, and Central Florida trailing in fifth. A lot of crews, as I'm sure our spectators know, will put moves on at the 1,000, and Harvard is putting on a great move here as they've gone from only a seat ahead of UCLA out to about 3 or 4 seats. They're bow to stern, Harvard is, down on Brown. Brown's in second, and Virginia continues to be 4 seats up on Brown in the lead. We'll see if UCLA can respond here in the third 500. They maintain a full length advantage over Central Florida, which is in 5th place. Just recapping the order here as we're coming up into the boating and spectator area. It's Virginia in first. Brown challenging them. They've taken a seat off that lead to bring it down to maybe 3 seats. A little bit of open water back to third place Harvard, and UCLA 4 seats down, but trying to move back. Harvard took a big move through the 1,000. They got themselves about a 4-seat advantage for the final qualifying spot, but UCLA trying to come back. They took a seat, but now Harvard has taken a seat back on them. So you have your lead 2 crews, and as we've been talking about third and fourth place, Brown has closed the gap on Virginia. Those 2 crews look like they're going straight to the semifinal, but you get a better draw if you can take first. Harvard, meanwhile, in that battle for third and fourth place, has seized a little better control, 5 seats out on UCLA. So right now, it's Virginia in the lead, 2 seats ahead of Brown, open water back to Harvard. get you a couple of stroke rate readings here. Brown is at 36 strokes per minute in second place. And Virginia is also at 36, and they've taken a seat back on Brown. Well, as we're in the final 500 meters here, it looks like it's going to continue to be Virginia and Brown fighting it out for first and second, with Virginia holding the advantage. Harvard looks to have a relatively comfortable lead for third place, UCLA in fourth, and Central Florida in fifth. Here comes one last charge now in the last 250. Brown trying to overtake Virginia. They'd like to win. It's a psychological advantage, and it could be a little bit of an advantage in the blind random draw for which semifinal progression there is. Brown almost drawing even with Virginia, and they brought it up to 38 strokes per minute. Virginia is responding. However, now it's Brown perhaps going ahead. We're going to have to let this go down to the finish line. Let the finish line judges call that, but it's definitely going to be Virginia, Brown, and Harvard advancing, with UCLA in fourth and Central Florida in fifth. And we are underway. The start typically is about 25 or 30 very hard and high stroke rating strokes to get out of the gates quickly, and then the crews will settle down into their base cadence. As you might expect from the seating, and the seated crews are put in the middle of the race course, Yale and Stanford are your early leaders in the middle, lanes 3 and 4. Tennessee hanging on pretty well, along with Dartmouth, and then it's a few seats back to Notre Dame and Princeton. But as we saw in the last race, the start's important, but the body of the race very important as well. We are through the breakage zone, and actually through the first 250 meters. We have a good view now of Yale in lane 3 out ahead by 2 seats over basically 4 crews. Lanes 1, 2, 4, and 5, Princeton, Notre Dame, Stanford, and Dartmouth are virtually dead level, 3 to 4 seats behind Yale, and Tennessee's another 4 seats back of that pack. Well, Yale doesn't want to mess around with any of this, close racing, 4 boats for 2 spots kind of stuff. So they're just going to continue to extend their lead at 36 strokes per minute. That seems to be a pretty common stroke rating here. There hasn't been too much separation, though, in the pack of 4. That's virtually straight across for 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th. And about 134 here through the first 500 meters. So at this point, a quarter of the way into the race, it's only Tennessee that's sort of off the pace and out of a qualifying position. As the crews now are well into their settle and doing whatever strategic moves they have at the 500 meter mark, Yale is continuing to go out ahead, and it looks like Notre Dame is starting to fall off the pace a little bit, but Stanford and Dartmouth are in 2nd and 3rd, and actually Dartmouth has just gone ahead of Stanford. So Notre Dame is falling off a little bit from that close grouping, as has Princeton, and actually Tennessee now, maybe they're just going to have a little more of a steady pace. They're starting to come back into that group. All right, 750 meters into the race. It's Yale, and now going into 2nd place, still Dartmouth. They're 2 seats over Stanford, and Stanford is 2 seats over Notre Dame, which is in 4th. And then now almost level in lanes 1 and 6 on the outside are Princeton and Tennessee for 5th and 6th. Well, Yale has definitely established some dominance here. Dartmouth has done a good job to really establish themselves as the 2nd place crew. Stanford is in third with Notre Dame within striking range, and Tennessee coming back strong. Well, we saw a lot of change in the second half of the first heat as we get to the halfway point here in about 3:13. And it's Yale by almost 6 seats now over Dartmouth. Dartmouth in turn has 2 seats over Stanford, and Notre Dame hasn't been able to close the gap on Stanford. They're 3 seats out of it in 4th place, Tennessee in 5th, and Princeton in 6th. So Yale can be pretty comfortable out there in the lead, knowing that they would have to be passed by 3 crews to not make it directly to the semifinal. But of course, they're coming in here as a favored crew. They want to take out a first place result. They're still at 35.5, 36 strokes per minute. It looks like the best move through the 1,000, though, is coming from Stanford and maybe also from Notre Dame. So Stanford has cut Dartmouth's lead in half, and they're only a seat down now, and they want to take second place away. Dartmouth is responding, seat and a half ahead of Stanford, and in the process of that battle, Yale has not been able to pull away anymore. Yeah, they're comfortably in first place, although I'm sure it never seems comfortable enough when you're in the boat. Well, right now, Notre Dame is the closest crew to cracking into the top 3, but they are about 4 seats out of Stanford, which is still 1 seat down on Dartmouth, although Notre Dame's putting on a little bit of a push here. And that's a smart call. We're coming up on the 1,500 meter mark. You're not in one of the qualifying positions. You got to go for it. You get a second chance either way this afternoon, so you might as well see if you can get it done here. Through the 1,500 meter mark, it continues to be Yale a length ahead. Dartmouth still hanging in, a seat over Stanford, and Notre Dame in 4th. Very close still between Tennessee and Princeton for 5th and 6th, but at this point look like they're heading to the repechage. So what can Notre Dame do here in the last 400 meters? They're still about 2 seats out, so that big move got them a little closer, but they're going to have to do something here in the last 300 meters. I don't know if they can put a move on top of the move. It continues to be Dartmouth by 1 seat over Stanford. That's your race for second and third. Well, here comes Notre Dame. Notre Dame's putting in the last push now, and it's a really effective push, and Stanford's going as well, and Dartmouth is now the odd crew out. Dartmouth has gone from 2nd to 4th in about 10 strokes, and that's coming from a big response out of Stanford and out of Notre Dame. So Dartmouth, which was in 2nd place for so long in this race, is now just on the outside, but coming back in their sprint. We're coming up on the last 100 meters. It is Yale in front, and it's going to be very close, probably a photo finish here for 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. I can't even call it, and I'm right on the buoy line. So we'll turn it over for the last 50 meters. The videotape is running. Right now, it looks like Stanford might have dropped back, but too hard to tell on the line. Yale first, very close between Notre Dame, Stanford, Dartmouth for 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, and then it's going to be Tennessee and Princeton. And we just heard the finish line horn, beep, beep, beep.
Ladies and gentlemen, having some technical difficulties with our on-water announcer for this race. Once again, this is the Division 1/8 Heat 3. Minnesota Lane 1, California Lane 2, Southern California Lane 3, Ohio State Lane 4, Washington Lane 5. Once again, the Lane 6 closest to us here on the shore, Lane 1 on the far side. And the crews are approaching 1,500 meters. That's 500 meters to go. It is Southern California in Lane 3 showing the way. Southern California and Ohio State showing the way. USC and Ohio State cross 1,500 meters to go, virtually the same time. The battle for third is California and Minnesota. Now under 250 meters to go, the crew's heading for the finish line.
All right, the starting commands have been given, and everybody's off, no problem. And it looks like everybody was safely pointed down their lanes. Really hard to tell much separation here as all the crews are coming off the line at virtually the same pace. USC got a real nice start in lane 6. They're actually closest to us here in the announcer's launch. And they're certainly going out nice and hard, and going with them here in the early going is California. So the two Pac-10 crews trying to separate themselves from the field, but the best response right now is coming from Harvard. So Harvard did a good job throughout the season, and in particular at the end of the year, to get themselves a team bid here to the championships, and they're showing some pretty good strength. They had a good race in the first 8 and a good race here in the second 8, as it's them and California now that are in the lead, but it's still very, very close between all the crews. SC is maybe starting to fall off the pace just a shade by a seat or two, and that's about it. We can actually hear now the USC coxswain calling the race off of California, as California now has finally gotten to the point where we can call them the clear leader, but that's only by about 2 seats, and that's 2 seats over Virginia. Haven't mentioned them yet. They've been right in the middle of that, pack of crews trying to sort themselves out, but now very clearly it's California and Virginia in first and second. On either side of those 2 boats, Princeton and Harvard are in third and fourth, although Princeton's starting to drop back a little bit, as now Washington has gone through them. So a lot of shifting back and forth through the first 500 meters, but not too much shifting in the sense of California and Virginia. For all of these teams, there's going to be differences in strengths between the different crews, between the first 8, the second 8, and the 4. Certainly, Virginia has a very strong second 8 this year, as does California, and those are the 2 crews that are going after it. Washington actually has shown great strength in the second varsity as well, and they've put themselves in a 3rd place position with Harvard in 4th, we'll call it SC in 5th, and Princeton in 6th as we come up onto the 750 meter mark. Well, California had been holding on to the lead, but Virginia has now upped their pace, and they've gone out to about a 3-seat advantage. So Virginia, which comes into this race highly regarded off of their regular season and their first postseason experience at the South Central Region Regatta, have gone out now to about 5 or 6 seats over California and continuing to move. Cal is continuing to hold on to second place by a handful of seats, but they're being challenged on both sides. Washington off to their port side, and on their starboard side, Harvard and USC. Again, the progression here is just the winner advances, and the other crews will have to come back for one of 2 repechages tomorrow. So really, you're going to get a second chance, whether you're second or 6th. But depending on your finish, the higher you finish, the better your draw will be for the repechage. So here we go as we're getting into the spectator area. Virginia so far in the best position to have the day off, and they still have 7 or 8 seats over California. USC now has put themselves clearly into 3rd. They're a half a length behind California. Washington and Harvard dead even, another 3 or 4 seats behind them, and then maybe 4 or 5 seats back to Princeton in 6th. Well, California went out hard. Virginia took the lead away from them. Right now it's California and USC, and maybe Washington as well, showing the greatest inclination to try and get back on terms with Virginia and get the direct qualifying position. But the Cavaliers really aren't having anything to do with that, as they've just now gone out to a full length over Cal. Again, that's a very commanding lead. They're rowing at 37 strokes per minute. That's something they should be able to handle throughout the race. They have open water over California. California has just under a length over Washington and USC. So it's your ACC crew leading, followed by the 3 Pac-10 crews. Only the top crew is going to go through directly. Coming up to the 500 meters to go mark in 5:03, 5:04, somewhere in that vicinity. Virginia with open water. California in second. And again, they certainly want to show that they're going to be the crew that's going to come out and win their repechage. But right now, they're not able to do anything on Virginia's lead. It's SC by maybe a foot over Washington in the race for 3rd and 4th. And then we go back half a length to Harvard and then Princeton. ACC, Pac-10, Ivy League. But it's only the ACC crew at this moment, Virginia, that's going to have the opportunity to go directly to the final as they're continuing to open water on the field. Washington has now gone out ahead of SC. They're clearly in third by a deck length and opening. We'll go ahead and let you guys catch the last 150 meters of this race. As unofficially, it looks like it's going to be Virginia going directly to the final. It's California comfortably in second. Then we have Washington, USC, Harvard, and Princeton in the first heat of the second eights in Division I. Brian, over to you.
Now I have official results for Heat 2 from the Division II eights. Western Washington with a winning time of 7 minutes, 3.8 seconds. Second place, Nova Southeastern, 7:23.35. And third place, Seattle Pacific, 7:45.6. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we've introduced the teams from the Division II and Division III ranks. Now for the Division I crews. Brown University from Providence, Rhode Island, making their 11th appearance here at the NCAA Division I Championships.
Well, that race got off without a hitch. Not a single hand was in the air. And still, as we're about just 30 meters into the race, pretty much straight across. Good start by Yale. And they'll probably have 1 or 2 seats as we just go through the 100-meter mark. So Yale doing a really good job of getting off the line well. Tennessee going pretty strongly with them in lane 2. So that's your early leaders, but again, we'll have to come off these racing strokes and into the settle, and things will definitely sort themselves out from there. But it continues to be Tennessee and Yale with Brown in third, Ohio State in fourth, and then in fifth place would be Minnesota. Through 250 meters, Tennessee and Yale, they weren't just good in the first 10 strokes. They're really good here in the starting sequence. They're separated by 4 lanes, but no problem for the coxswains of the respective crews to look across and see that. Now remember, Brown traditionally has not been the fastest off the line, but they sure have a heck of a good middle thousand. And they're sitting in third position. Again, it's only the first place crew that will go directly to the final. That's Yale, then Tennessee, and then Brown. And here comes Ohio State as well. Minnesota is also in the thick of things. Only Notre Dame's a little bit off the pace, but as we saw in the heat of the first 8, Notre Dame was very strong through the last 3 quarters of the race. So we're certainly not going to count them out of it just because they're in 6th place at the 500-meter mark. Well, Brown's coming on strong, as I mentioned, so is Minnesota, so is Ohio State, but it still continues to be Yale and Tennessee. They got their bows out ahead early in the race. They haven't given anything back since then, but it's a real tightly grouped pack of 5, and now actually a full length and maybe a shade of open water back to Notre Dame in 6th place. Again, this is your first opportunity to see the true depth of these teams and to see who's going to be in contention for the team championship. And as I suspected, Brown, with 750 meters gone, 1250 to go, has put themselves in the lead position. They've taken the lead away from Tennessee and Yale, which are still in second. But really, between first place and 5th place right now, there's 4 or 5 seats. It's Ohio State that's in 5th. It's Brown that's in 1st. 5 seats separating those crews. Although Yale putting on a good move now. We can hear the extra excitement for the coxswain taking a power move, and they've gone back out in front of Brown. So Brown and Yale now locked in a very tight race. Minnesota coming on strong. That's another crew that demonstrated some good second half speed in the first 8. You might suspect similar race plans, similar physiology from the second 8, which trains alongside the first 8 on almost a daily basis. Well, it's Brown and Yale, and in the process of battling each other for the lead, which continues to be Yale by a couple of feet over Brown, they've started to separate the rest of the pack, but Minnesota does not want to get separated. They've gone into third, and it's Tennessee and Ohio State in fourth and fifth, with Notre Dame behind that group of 5. So this is a very exciting race. The last race we saw a crew get out into first place and hold on to it with a lot of control. That was Virginia. And yeah, Yale and Brown are doing a good job, and they're back to almost level. In fact, Brown has gone back out ahead. So Yale took the first move after the 1,000-meter mark, got themselves ahead of Brown, but Brown's taking the second move, and that's gotten them back into first place. And Minnesota is staying 4 seats behind Brown, and in the process has come up to within a foot or 2 of Yale. Well, Brown under a lot of pressure off of their starboard side. They're at 36 strokes per minute. They have half a length. Yale is starting to fade a little bit, but Minnesota is going with them. Tennessee is still in fourth, Ohio State fifth, Notre Dame sixth. We'll continue to focus, though, our attention on the battle for first and second. Yale's in third, and it's Minnesota that looks like they're going to be the only crew as we come to the last 500 with something left to challenge Brown. Well, we're coming up on the 5-minute mark, and as they come to the 500 to go, we're at 5:06. So you have about a minute and 38 seconds or so to go, and that's all the time that Minnesota has left to take 5 seats away from Brown. And I don't think Brown's going to let them do that. Brown has already elevated the stroke rate. They've gotten another seat. And Minnesota, boy, they put in a nice charge there. They certainly got themselves clearly into second position. Even if that's where they end up, that's still going to be good for them as far as the repechage, both what they draw and their confidence for that race. But Brown is just not giving anything away here as they've gone out to 6 or 7 seats. Yale continues in third, 8 seats behind Minnesota. Very tight between Ohio State and Tennessee for fourth and fifth. So it continues to be Brown as we come into the last 150 meters. Minnesota gamely trying to go with them. But at this point, I think their attention is going to be on just holding off the third, fourth, and fifth place crews. Again, the repechage is tomorrow. So all the crews unfolding the entire race plan, the full sprint. And right now, the full race plan is working best for Brown. They've held off that charge from Minnesota. They're continuing to extend their lead. And, of course, the unofficial result from out here on the announce boat is going to be Brown in first place, advancing directly to the grand final. And back over to Brian.
As we await official results from the Division I.
Oh, that was a great start. Everybody is underway. Remember that the seeded crews here are Virginia and Washington. Virginia having won out here at the South Central region, and Washington having won out at the Pac-10 championships. Washington, far and away, has the best start, although Virginia is in second place early on, and Harvard is in third. But again, we'll let the race get going for a little while later to give you a little bit more of a sorted out order. And even though Washington got out of the blocks well, it's only with a 1-seat advantage over Virginia, and Virginia's moving on them. Both those crews have 3 seats over Harvard, and then maybe another couple of seats back to Tennessee. The Vols are way over there in lane 1, so the local fans are going to have to yell a little louder for them to hear your cheers out there. But it's the other crew with orange. That's the orange oars and the orange tops of the unisuits of Virginia that have gone out into the lead now. So Washington out early, but now it's all Virginia. A lot of experience in that boat, including a lot of NCAA 4s experience in the Virginia crew, and it's serving them quite well. 2nd place Washington, 3rd place Harvard, 4th place is Tennessee, and then it's pretty level for 5th and 6th between Minnesota and Southern California. We'll give a slight advantage to SC, currently rowing in 5th, and Minnesota in 6th. Well, we certainly knew that Virginia had a lot of depth to their team. Their 4 has been doing really well as they go through 500 meters at about 144. And they've been racking up some just gargantuan margins of victory in the process of winning their races. So it's Virginia out by a length now as we've gone past the 500-meter mark with all the crews. Washington continues to be in 2nd place, Harvard in 3rd, Tennessee 4th, and still very close for 5th and 6th between Minnesota and SC. Both Minnesota and SC are only 2 seats behind Tennessee, which is in turn only 2 seats behind Harvard, to give you sort of an idea of the range of the pack here. And again, it's Virginia that if they were to continue to hold on to this lead, would go directly to the grand final. The other crews all coming back into the repechage, but as we've mentioned repeatedly, the higher you finish, the better your draw for the repechage. Right now it's Washington continuing in 2nd place, and we can really almost stop talking about Virginia, not because they're doing anything wrong, because they're doing stuff so right that they've got a ton of open water, and really the only drama here is who's going to take 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. 35 strokes per minute in Washington's crew. The Pac-10 champions holding on to about a 2-seat advantage over Harvard, and SC are almost level in 3rd and 4th. We go back now. Tennessee is still holding on to 5th, but just barely ahead of Minnesota. So it's Virginia that continues to just open it up. What more can I say? A lot of open water. This is a very dominating performance as they go through the halfway mark with over a length of open water on the rest of the pack. Washington is looking good, but SC is coming on very, very strong here. And again, Washington won the final of the Pac-10s. USC, of course, was in that race, and they're doing their best here in the heat to try and overtake their Pac-10 rival, with Harvard sandwiched in the middle, but down into 4th place. Virginia continues comfortably up ahead. In the back of the race, Minnesota has gone ahead of Tennessee, so it's Minnesota in 5th, Tennessee in 6th. And looks like SC is about to take 2nd place away from Washington. Again, a lot of that is involved with psychology and placement within the petite finals. USC is rowing very, very aggressively. They're at 34 strokes per minute. Washington displaying maybe a little bit more of a calm technique, but also at 34 strokes per minute. You'll see a lot of different techniques and styles, of course, throughout the crews at this regatta, but SC has definitely gone from behind Washington to ahead of them. So the Trojans ahead of the Huskies. We don't want to forget to remind everybody that it's Virginia winning the race handily up ahead. That's why we don't mention them too often. So USC in 2nd, Washington in 3rd, Harvard in 4th, but here comes Minnesota. They're about 2 seats of open water down on USC, bow to stern behind Washington, and only 2 seats behind Harvard. So a lot of jockeying for position going on behind this very dominant Virginia team. And this really is a great reversal of earlier season form for SC. Taking nothing away from Washington, they look to be rowing very well and very strongly. But SC is definitely turning the tables on them in this heat compared to what happened in Sacramento a couple of weeks ago. Harvard continuing to feel pressure from Minnesota, which is now only 2 seats behind. That's the race for 4th and 5th, with about 450 meters to go for your leader. More than that, though, for the trailing crews. All right, you hear a lot of cheering now coming from the grandstand area. A lot of the women who are already done with their racing for the day. It's awesome. They're out there cheering on their teammates here in the fours competition. Well, the loudest and most effective cheer is going to Virginia out ahead. And it's definitely USC in second, Washington in third. Minnesota has taken over 4th place. Harvard's fading a little bit as Tennessee might go through them as well. All of these crews, except Virginia, will get the opportunity to come back for another chance to make into the grand final. Of course, Virginia doesn't need one because it looks like they're going to win this heat and win it comfortably. Virginia's at 32.5 strokes per minute. No need to go higher than that with their big lead. SC still holding on at 34 ahead of Washington. Washington has brought it up to about 35 and a half, and they're holding on to 3rd position. So, Brian, it looks like it's going to be Virginia advancing directly to the grand final. It's going to be pretty close, apparently, for the 4th, 5th, and 6th position. We'll let everything get sorted out by the officials, and we'll see what the lane draws are for the reps. But Virginia winning handily, unofficially here in the first heat. Over to you, Brian.
All right, Bill, thank you very much. We bring you now official results from Heat 2 in the Division II fours. It was Western Washington with a winning time of 8:23.56. Nova Southeastern second, 8:54.16. Our final race of the morning session coming up in just a few moments, scheduled to begin at 11 a.m. It'll be Heat 2 of the Division I fours. In Lane 1, it'll be California. Lane 2, Brown. Lane 3, Yale. Lane 4, Ohio State. Lane 5, Notre Dame. And Lane 6.
And we're off. Alrighty, we'll look to the middle and see if the seeded crews there, Yale and Ohio State, and in fact it's Ohio State that's gone out into the early advantage, followed by Yale in second. So very aggressive start by Ohio State. We are through the first 100 meters. There's not going to be any breakage in these boats, but were some to occur in the first 100 meters, they'd call the race back, repair things, and start it over. So Ohio State very aggressive out of the gate, and that's gotten them about 3-seat advantage over Yale, although Princeton is, well, maybe 2 seats behind that. So we'll call Princeton in third here as they're still sorting things out. Notre Dame has dropped a little bit off the pace, as has Cal. And again, we don't necessarily expect Brown to be in the front too soon, but as I say that, what do you know? Brown's in the lead. So this time it only took him about 350 meters, and Brown is in front. Yale is in second. Ohio State is in third. Still having a good push by Princeton in the outside. They're in fourth. They're about a seat ahead of California, which is in fifth. And then we go 3 or 4 seats back to Notre Dame. So Brown with now a half a boat length advantage over Yale and moving. Yale in turn has 3/4 of a length over Ohio State. And then it's maybe 2 seats back to Princeton, another seat to California in fifth, and then another couple of seats back to Notre Dame. 500 meters in 1:46. So not that different of a time compared to the first heat. And of course, there's going to be some minor differences in the wind. Hopefully you picked up on the video board there as the crews went past us. We have to drop back a little bit at the 500 meter mark because of the narrowness of the course. But it's easy to see that it's Brown and Yale that are going out in front of the pack now. It's still Brown in the lead, and they still have about 3 seats on Yale, so their relative position has not changed, but their relative position to the rest of the pack sure has, as they now have open water over the other 4 crews. And the other 4 crews are getting pretty darn close together for 3rd through 6th. The Princeton coxswain nearest to us, encouraging her crew to push. They're pushing at 35 strokes per minute. Notre Dame, which trailed early, yet again showing the ability to come back here in the middle 1,000. They're at 34 strokes per minute. But it is Brown with a length now over Yale, and Yale a length over, well, we'll call California, well, actually Princeton in 3rd, sorry, Princeton in 3rd now, California 4th, and Ohio State 5th, and Notre Dame 6th. So it's really Princeton. People got to watch out for them. They're out here in lane 6, a couple of lanes over. I'm not even sure if the Yale coxswain has noticed, but Princeton has come all the way up into 3rd now as California is dropping off the pace a little bit. It's still a foot or 2 of open water for Brown. Don't forget them. They're your leaders. But it's Princeton moving up on Yale. And in fact, the coxswain just said that, moving up. So if you're Princeton, you got to take it 1 position at a time. So the first thing they want to do is take 2nd place away from Yale and then see if they can do something as far as 1st place, which is Brown. At 1,000 meters, though, it's Brown now with 2 seats of open water. But wow, look at Princeton put on that move, and they are now only a foot down. And it continues to be the Princeton coxswain calling push, and it's the Princeton rowers doing the pushing themselves all the way up into 2nd place. Wow, it's an awesome move. They're in 2nd. They're 2 seats, 3 seats down on Brown. So we have a new 2nd place crew, Princeton, still Yale in 3rd. Very close between California, Ohio State, and Notre Dame for 4th, 5th, and 6th. But we really want to spend the most attention on Princeton. I don't know that they're going to be able to even come bow to stern on Brown and take the automatic direct qualifying position away, but they sure have put on one heck of a charge since about the 500 meter mark. So Brown continues out ahead. They're just marking the field and actually continuing to pull ahead a little bit. They're up to maybe 4 seats of open water, lowering at 35 strokes per minute. Fairly high for a 4, but who's going to argue with the results? Also 35.5 strokes per minute for Princeton. Since they've gone maybe 2-3 feet ahead of Yale, they haven't gotten any more on them, and Yale is pushing back. I don't think either of these crews are going to catch up to their Ivy League sister there, Brown, in 1st place. But I think there's a little bit of bragging rights going on. It does continue to be Princeton in 2nd, Yale in 3rd, California's in 4th, Notre Dame's in 5th, as Ohio State slips off the pace in 6th. Well, we're coming up with 500 meters to go, and your time is unofficially about 5:35. That's some pretty good speed in the 4s. And Yale has gone back in front of Princeton. So that Princeton push, it's been long, it's been tough, it's been effective, but it may be costing them there in the last 500 meters as Yale has taken back 2nd place. California is still working pretty hard. They're in 4th, but they're closing down on Princeton. Notre Dame 5th, Ohio State 6th. And actually Yale is starting to close in on Brown. If I was Brown, I wouldn't be too concerned about it just yet. It's still an open water lead. But Yale definitely rowing so far the fastest last 500 meters. They're already up to 37 strokes per minute, coming into about 250 meters to go, maybe a shade more than that. As we recap the positions, it's Brown, Yale, Princeton, California, Notre Dame, Ohio State. And still continues to be about 2 seats of open water advantage for Brown over Yale. Again, the rowers are just 1 lane adjacent. They can see what's going on. They've seen the big move from Yale. and they're responding. They're still holding on to 2 seats of open water. Princeton's holding on to third, about half a boat length over California. Doesn't look like much is going to change between 5th and 6th, as Notre Dame's holding on to 5th and Ohio State 6th. So another strong performance from Brown, as it looks like they're going to take the win here in the second heat. They'll join Tennessee directly to the grand final. Everybody else getting a second chance tomorrow. Thank you for the morning session. We'll turn it over to Brian. Hope to have you back for the afternoon session.
Thank you, Bill. We look forward to hearing your call of the 3 races in the afternoon session. Once again, that begins at 1 o'clock. Official results from the Division I 4's Heat 1. Virginia with a winning time of 7 minutes, 34.48 seconds. Second place, USC, 7:43.75. That's over a 9-second win for the Cavaliers of Virginia.
But instead we have the conventional start, and it's underway. All right, 4th time was the charm that time. You hear the coxswains yelling, encouraging their crews, calling the starting sequence. Really not much to separate the crews, although much like we saw earlier today, the host institution, the Tennessee Volunteers, they're in lane 5 this afternoon. They're out ahead a little bit, but really it's very, very close. Only Central Florida in lane 6 is about 4 seats, 5 seats off of their pace. Everybody else within a seat or 2. But Tennessee going out hard and seizing early control of the race. That's certainly the best race strategy. Get ahead, stay ahead. They're at 36 strokes per minute at the 250-meter mark. Get ahead isn't necessarily the harder part of that strategy. The stay ahead part is. And right now the stay ahead part is not working because Princeton out in lane 0 has gone out into the lead. UCLA in lane 3 is going with Princeton. Tennessee's still in the thick of things, but again, it's a very, very tightly packed bunch, except that Princeton has nudged their bow deck ahead of the rest of the field, and the University of Central Florida has sort of fallen back a little bit. So your most aggressive starts have come from Tennessee and from Princeton, also from UCLA and now Stanford, second place out of the Pac-10. Remember, only the top 3 crews will get to go on to the semifinal round tomorrow. We're through the 500-meter mark, and it is Central Florida in 7th place. We've had to fall back a little bit here, as we normally do at the 500-meter mark, but it does appear to be Princeton out in the lead now, and Tennessee in 2nd. Stanford 3rd, and then very close between the other 3 Pac-10 schools, Washington, California, and UCLA for 4th, 5th, and 6th. We're still not quite to the 750-meter mark. Excellent conditions out here. Lots of time for these crews to continue to move back and forth in this pack. Tennessee doesn't want to be in the pack, though, nor does Princeton, as they're attacking both at around 35 or 36 strokes per minute. And they continue to be your 2 leaders, 35.5 in the UCLA crew. That's pretty much the predominant stroke rate here. Really only Central Florida is sort of out of this race. But Washington now is also starting to fall off a little bit, as is California, and Stanford is looking to take over the lead. So it's very close between Princeton, Stanford, and Tennessee. If the race were to end now, which it won't, there's 1,000 meters to go, those would be your 3 qualifiers for the semifinal. UCLA in 4th, Washington and Cal still about dead level, and 5th and 6th. A lot of spectators out here as we've crossed the 1,000-meter mark, or about to, cheering on their crews. Boy, Princeton's doing a great job on the outside. That's what you got to do. Front end this race. No point in staying outside of the qualifying position the whole way. So it's Princeton out ahead now. We'll see what they can do, as a lot of crews are going to make moves now that we're past the 1,000-meter mark. Princeton at 35.5. And second place, Stanford. Third place, Tennessee. Fourth place, UCLA. They still have about 3 seats over Washington and California, virtually dead level, with Central Florida off the pace. Tennessee's starting to slip back a little bit now. It's Princeton by, let's call it 4 seats over Tennessee. Tennessee 3 seats over Stanford 3 seats over Tennessee. Then another 4 or 5 seats back to UCLA, a couple of seats to Cal and Washington, and then open water back to Central Florida. Well, Princeton didn't get out of the gates the fastest, but they've been controlling the race for a long time now. Let's see if they're able to keep that energy level going. 35 strokes per minute in the Tigers. And Stanford now is closed down to about a seat or 2 at the most in second place. Tennessee still hanging tough, only 2 or 3 seats off of them. Then you go about 6 or 7 seats back to the other 3 Pac-10 crews, UCLA, Washington, California in that order, with Central Florida off the pace. Well, Stanford is still trailing Princeton, but not by much, maybe a seat now. Tennessee continues to be in third place. They're looking to get open water over UCLA and just at least make sure they're going to be going to the semifinal round. Stanford and Princeton keep counterattacking each other here. I would say they've pulled pretty much dead level now, about 1,550 meters into the race. Surging back and forth, and Tennessee's only 2 seats off of them. That lead pack of 3, though, has really put the other 4 crews just straight into the third level final at this point, unless they can make up a length, and now even some open water. So you have a lead pack of 3 with Stanford and Princeton virtually level. Stanford now in the lead by 2 seats. Tennessee 3 seats off of them, but a length, and coming charging now out of that pack of 4th, 5th, and 6th is Washington. So Washington's saying, look, we can't stay here. We got to get into tomorrow's semifinal round. Let's jack it up to a 38 and go. UCLA is trying to respond as well to go with Washington, and Princeton looks like they're starting to fade. Coming up toward the finish line now with the last 100 meters, it's Stanford in the lead, and it continues to be Princeton in second, Tennessee in third. Washington is charging, but it looks like they're going to run out of room. As we're coming to the final of the repechage here, we have to stop just before the line, but it looks like it's going to be Stanford, Princeton, Tennessee as your qualifiers, followed by Washington, UCLA, California, and Central Florida. Back over to you, Brian. While the polling is going on, I don't see any bow person's or coxswain's hand in the air. And so they were able to get to start off almost immediately after the polling. We're underway, day 2, Division 1, first 8 semifinal. All 6 boats rowing in the mid 40 strokes per minute range. And as we pick it up 100 meters into the race, first across the line is Yale. Yale is one of the 2 undefeated crews in this regatta. USC is in the next semifinal, so that matchup will have to wait probably for the final. And Yale is certainly living up to their heat winning and undefeated status, as they've gone out very, very hard and have already taken about a 3/4 of a length lead over the rest of the field. So it's an awesome start by Yale. At this moment, we'll call Dartmouth in second place in lane 5, followed all the way outside by Harvard in third, with Princeton and Brown in a very close race for 4th and 5th, and Minnesota behind a little bit. Well, this is a tremendously impressive start by Yale. They're not messing around. 400 meters into the race, they have almost a full length over Princeton, Harvard, Dartmouth, and Brown, which are virtually level, although we'll call Princeton in second place. And then you only have Minnesota about 2 seats off of that. Well, Yale's setting a blistering pace, but it's Princeton that's going the best with them, although almost a length behind. That was about 1:31 for the first 500 meters. And right now, Yale does have a full length. It's still Princeton in second. They have about 2 seats over Dartmouth and maybe a seat or so from there back to Brown and to Harvard. Minnesota's trailing by about half a length. We've seen in previous racing, though, that Minnesota has a very strong middle 1,000 of the race. So even though right now they're in 6th place, I certainly would not discount their ability to get into the top 3. But right now, nobody's able to come up on level terms with Yale. They have open water on the field, tremendously impressive. There's still plenty of space to go. We have 1,250 meters to go. But it's all Yale at this point in time. Princeton continues in second place. Dartmouth is right there. Brown is right there. Harvard is starting to fall off the pace. They're still in 5th. So we have Yale with open water, Princeton holding in second place, and now here comes the patented mid-race move by Brown. Brown is really charging here. It's only 34 strokes a minute, but they've gone into a clear second place in front of Princeton, which had been in second place. It's still 2 seats of open water, though, between Brown and Yale. We're about to go through the halfway point. I'll give you a time here. It is 3:07 to the 1,000-meter mark with open water still, 2 feet of open water for Yale, but Brown is in second. Princeton still hanging on to third. They have about 3 seats over Dartmouth and Harvard, with another 3 or 4 seats back to Minnesota in 6th. Well, I tell you, that was a great move by Brown as far as getting themselves up into a second place position and sort of saying, well, we'll have another shot at Yale tomorrow. But Yale is not giving much quarter. They're rowing at 36 strokes per minute, and they're doing a great job of holding on to their open water lead over the field. Brown is in second place. Princeton is still in third. Those are your 3 qualifiers at the moment. It's very close, 3 or 4 seats behind Princeton for Dartmouth and Harvard. And now finally, Minnesota is putting on the charge with 750 meters to go. Minnesota is still able to get into the 3rd place position, but they need to pass 3 crews to do that. Brown is working hard, but they have not been able to close the open water advantage that Yale has. So Yale continues open water over Brown. Brown struggling to get overlap in second place. Princeton about a half a length behind them. Those continue to be your top 3. Minnesota's charge hasn't been able to do much more than whittle 2 seats off of their disadvantage on the rest of the field. They continue in 6th, although they're coming up towards Dartmouth, but it's Princeton still with half a length over Harvard. Princeton will be quite smart to just at this point focus on Harvard in lane 1 with less than 500 meters to go. They have 6 seats. I just saw their coxswain look over. She sees 6 or 7 seats advantage for 3rd place Princeton over 4th place Harvard. So it continues to be Yale with open water, Brown in 2nd, Harvard in 3rd, Princeton in 3rd, Harvard trying to take that 3rd place position away, but not making much of an impact. Well, Yale's sitting pretty up front there. We'll get one more stroke rate reading on them. They're still at 36 strokes per minute. They're not necessarily going to need to wind it up for a break sprint. We're coming up to the final 200 meters. Princeton is the crew that's in danger as Harvard is trying to charge back on them. So it's clearly going to be Yale in first place. Brown in second. It's going to be very close. Here comes Harvard on the outside, trying to take the third qualifying position away from Princeton. We'll see if they're going to be able to do it. We're going to have to drop back so we clear off the line. And we're underway here. Second race of the day. All the crews are off the line, no problems. And it's hard to tell who the early leader might be, so we won't call anything in particular. Certainly USC has gotten off the line very well. They have a couple of seats off over Virginia, but a very tightly packed bunch as we go through 100 meters. But it is USC just nudging a couple of feet out in front, and their closest pursuer right now is Tennessee over in lane 6. Tennessee has proven all weekend that they like to go out of the gates very, very strong, so they have another good start here. But it's USC in first place by about 2 seats, and actually now Virginia has gone into second, Stanford into third, and fourth place Notre Dame, fifth place Ohio State, sixth place Tennessee, and that's about 6 seats from first place back to sixth. Well, USC is trying to take charge of this race, much like you saw Yale take charge of the first semifinal. They are in the lead, but certainly not as dominating as we saw in the previous semifinal. USC getting challenged mostly by Virginia. They still have 2 seats. They've had 2 seats ever since the first few strokes of the race as we go through 500 meters in 132 and change. So we still see USC, the Trojans, in the lead, Virginia in second place. Third place is a close battle between Stanford and Notre Dame and Ohio State. They're all very close. Tennessee has fallen about 4 seats behind that pack that's battling for third, fourth, and fifth. Again, you'd certainly like to win or take second in this race, but top 3 will get you into the grand final. And right now, Virginia is trying really hard to try and cut into the early USC advantage, and they've been able to shave it in half. Instead of 2 seats, it's 1 seat. Virginia is rowing at 36, trying to take a big move here as we approach the 750-meter mark, and it's almost dead level now, almost dead level. And Ohio State, the Buckeyes, in lane 5, they're in third place. And the 2 outside lanes, Stanford and Tennessee, are having a little trouble now holding on to this pace. So really at this point, it looks like we have 4 crews going for the 3 places: Virginia, Southern California, Notre Dame, and Ohio State. Right now, it's Notre Dame, the odd crew out of the top 3, but they're only 3 seats behind Notre Dame. So we're coming to the 1,000-meter mark. Virginia, I believe, has just taken the lead away from Southern California. So Virginia's had one long, sustained push, and it's been very, very effective. This is the first time USC has trailed literally all year long. 1,000 meters, halfway through the race, Virginia just ahead of USC. Ohio State continues in third place, but they're under serious pressure now by Notre Dame. They only have 2 seats over Notre Dame. Tennessee is in 5th. Stanford is in 6th. They're going to have a lot of trouble getting back up into the top 3, so we'll focus on what was a 2-boat race for the lead. It's now 3 boats as Ohio State has come up to only a seat or so down. So it's Virginia by, 2 inches over USC, and then it's 2 seats now back to Ohio State, another seat or so to Notre Dame. 4 crews, 3 lanes available in the grand final. Virginia and USC battling out at the head of that pack. In the process, they've taken a couple of seats back out of Ohio State and Notre Dame. So we have your 2 clear front runners separated by mere inches, but it is Virginia leading USC, then it's Ohio State, and then it's Notre Dame. Notre Dame has also proven to be strong through the body of the race. They're also at 36 strokes per minute, but they have not been able to eat into the 2 or 3 seat lead that Ohio State, your 3rd place crew, has over them. Tennessee continues in 5th, and Stanford in 6th. But it's a strong 1st and 2nd place battle between Virginia and USC. Ohio State's in 3rd, and they've actually taken a seat more on Notre Dame. So now Notre Dame's facing a 4-seat deficit with 500 meters to go. 500 meters to go in the 2nd semifinal. Will USC lose their undefeated record? Right now, they're not in danger of not advancing to the grand final. And just as I said, are they going to lose that undefeated streak? SC has taken the lead back away from Virginia. There's certainly a lot of seasoned rowers in that crew for USC as well as for Virginia. It's tremendous racing. Ohio State only 2 seats out of it, maybe 3 seats out of it in 3rd place. And here come the Irish. Here's the Irish move that we've been anticipating. They don't want to make it into the petite final. They want the grand final, and now they're charging, and they're only 2 seats back of Ohio State. This is a very tight group of 4. It continues to be USC, Virginia leading the pack, Notre Dame and Ohio State. It's Ohio State in 3rd, Notre Dame in 4th. It's going to be real close. This is certainly going to come down to the last 10 strokes. We're in the final 250 meters. SC has pulled clearly ahead of Virginia. Ohio State has taken another seat back on Notre Dame. So Notre Dame is still in 3rd. Ohio State actually might take the 2nd place away from Virginia. We're going to have to back off the line so we don't interfere with the finish line judges. But it is USC with a good comeback. They're in 1st. Virginia's in 2nd. Ohio State is in 3rd. And it looks like Notre Dame is going to fall just short of making it to the grand final. Conditions, but for some reason we're having a little problem getting all 6 crews lined up at the same time, but now they are lined up and the start has been given. It's always exciting to hear the yelling and exhilaration of the coxswains as they urge their crew out of the starting platform. Very little separation. We don't see a crew that's blasting out ahead in the first 100 meters. And now that we're into the first 150 meters, we can, for the first time, see a leader, and that would be Princeton. So Princeton's 4 by about a duck length over the other 4 crews, which are all within 1 or 2 feet of each other. Harvard is starting to find the pace a little bit difficult as now they've fallen 2 seats behind the other 4 crews. It's Princeton with a little bit of an advantage. but it's Tennessee, California, and Southern California hanging right with them, and then Harvard 2 or 3 seats behind that pack. Well, Princeton's hanging on to that very narrow margin, but essentially you have 4 first-place crews, and then Harvard 2 to 3 seats back. Things will start sorting out. Of course, only the top 2 go, so you have to have some front-end loading aspect to your race. You don't want to find yourself in a non-qualifying position early in the race. Still have not yet reached the 500-meter mark, but Princeton is starting now to extend their lead. This race will take about 45 to 50 seconds longer than the 8s races, so a little more time for strategy to unfold, perhaps a little bit more pacing, and we'll get you a time as they go through the 500-meter mark in 1:49, 1 minute and 49 seconds. And Princeton was first across the line. They have now 2 seats over California. And California, well, actually California has just slipped back a little bit, but California was in second place. And actually Harvard, which had been falling off, is getting back into the thick of things here. Tennessee's starting to fall off the pace, but it's California, Southern California, and Princeton right now very close in a lead pack of 3, of which only 2 can go to the grand final. Well, California's put the pressure back on, and it's Southern California, the Trojans, that have fallen back clearly into 3rd place. So California is certainly trying to challenge Princeton, which has been leading from about the 10th stroke on. We're coming up onto the 750-meter mark, 12:50 to go. Princeton, California, Southern California, Harvard, and Tennessee. That was your order with 12:50 to go. And Princeton's advantage is slight, maybe 2 seats. California, again, in second place. They'd love to get back on terms with Princeton, but second place will do it as far as advancing to the grand final. SC is in that precarious position of 3rd place, and they're still being challenged for 3rd place by Harvard. So USC is about 3 or 4 seats out of second place and 3 or 4 seats in front of 4th place. Tennessee looks like they're falling open water behind Harvard. So it continues to be, as we're approaching the 1,000-meter mark, Princeton, California, USC, your top 3. Well, Princeton's been doing a great job of controlling the race. They're at 37 strokes per minute. They hit 3 minutes and 40 seconds for the halfway point. That's pretty good speed. High stroke rate, good speed, half a length lead over California, working well for the Tigers. California is a little bit lower in stroke rate, but not that much more. And they're just trying their best to get back to Princeton. In the process, though, they're putting more space between them and USC. So they've closed the gap now on Princeton. California making a good move here. They're about 3 beats, 3 strokes per minute lower than Princeton. And California may take the lead away in about the next 10 or 15 strokes. They both have, though, almost a full length on USC, followed by Harvard and then Tennessee. Well, Princeton's clinging to the lead, but California's about to take it away. And there go the Cal Bears. Remember, they're your defending team champions. 750 meters to go. New leader, California. Well, Princeton's done a great job controlling the race. They've now given up the lead to Cal. Cal's continuing to move. They're getting almost a seat every 2 or 3 strokes. Meanwhile, Princeton should start focusing in on USC. USC has a little bit of overlap, so not quite a full-length advantage for Princeton over USC. Nothing wrong with Princeton's strategy of getting the lead. Of course, they didn't plan to give it up, but if it goes away and you're still in second, that's all right. USC has about 550 meters left to make up a 3/4 length deficit and make it into the grand final. Harvard continues to be in 4th place, but they're almost a length behind USC, and Tennessee is open water behind Harvard. Well, California is going to go through the 1,500-meter mark, about 5:35 for the time. They have 3/4 of a length over Princeton, and Princeton is proving to be very tenacious. They are not giving anything back on USC. So you can tell there's less than 2 minutes left to go in this race, probably only about a minute and a half actually, and SC has 3/4 of a length to make up if they want to get into the grand final. California looking very comfortable. They've obviously been rowing a race that they're comfortable with, not too worried that they weren't in first place. They were always in a qualifying position. They're at 33.5 strokes per minute. Maybe giving a shade back to Princeton, but it's still at least a half a length, if not a bit more. California and Princeton are moving at about the same speed as is USC. That's bad news for USC. They need to move faster than Princeton in order to make up that deficit. All three of the lead crews going at virtually the same speed. They're coming to the last 250 meters. There hasn't been maybe a couple of inches changes in relative position, except now there's a big change, but it's coming from California. California's putting on the better sprint so far to consolidate their first place position. SC's going up. They've maybe taken a seat on Princeton, but they still have 4 more seats just to get even. 36 strokes per minute in USC. They got maybe a seat back as they started their sprint. The lead 3 crew is getting lots more open water on the other 2 boats, but it's California that is continuing to lead, and Princeton's in second place, and USC's in third. They're trying gamely, but they're going to run out of race course, and it looks like unofficially it's going to be California and Princeton advancing to the grand final with the other 3 crews going to the petites.